Hey there and welcome back to XCOM 2. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Legend Ironman walkthrough of XCOM 2 War of the Chosen. Last time we left off after extracting a small covert action team from an Advent ambush, and so we're now one step closer to hunting down the Chosen assassin. Now today we are very likely in for another Retaliation mission. In episode 9 the time frame for the next one was given as 1 week and it is now 12 days later, so the mission is probably somewhat overdue and we want to be ready for that. Before we start scanning though, it is time to start the next covert operation. Thanks to the Resistance Ring we can now immediately launch one as soon as the previous one has finished. At this point, also a big thank you for all of your comments on the last episode. Overall, the vast majority was in favor of either contacting the Templars or recruiting another scientist, with a few people also advocating for countering the Chosen. Due to popular demand, however, I have decided that we are in fact going to locate the Templars first. There will likely be other ways to recruit scientists, perhaps even in the near future, while this is the only way to get in touch with the new faction that could very much come in handy. Now, to start this mission we need a sergeant-level soldier, and it's nice to see a more or less completely healthy pool of candidates here, and since the mission reward is a small aim bonus, we want to take Sharpshooter Sapphire West, as sharpshooters can almost always use more accuracy. To accompany her we will send out Ranger Jan Hussar Sobieski. He hasn't actually seen a full mission yet, and this will allow him to gain some much-needed experience. So let's send them out, hope that nobody gets injured, and then we'll hear back from them, as well as from the new faction in about 10 days. Until then, we can keep scanning, and we'll continue to do so at the Skirmisher HQ, at least until we have gathered 5 more units of intel, which will then allow us to make contact with the next resistance region. Alright, and there it is. As expected, it's time for the next Retaliation mission, this one taking place in the heart of Italy.
You should have known I'd be coming for your friends eventually.
So, for the second time in this playthrough, Advent is attacking civilians, which means there is no time to waste to put a stop to that.
Setting course for Western Europe.
And this here will be our squad for today: Sharpshooters Nami Tarias, Ranger Starfall Antec, Reaper Dragonova, Specialist Van Dyke and Grenadier Nicholas Finlay. Before we get going then, let's apply a couple of upgrades. In the last episode we picked up an advanced scope that we definitely want to make use of right away, so let's slap it on a sniper rifle to give Ada Lynn some extra aim. Following that, we will then apply our first personal combat sim, and with this one granting extra mobility, it does make sense for a melee-focused ranger, and Starfall Antec definitely fits that description. This also unlocks the Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger achievement, so once again we are now one step closer to full completion. Starfall's shotgun then also receives an upgrade in the form of a simple stock. This ensures that even missed shots do at least 1 point of damage, and with the shotgun's range being limited, the occasional miss is sadly unavoidable. One final upgrade then goes on Nicholas's cannon. Yes, we already have a cannon with a tier 1 scope, but the extra ammo from the expanded magazine here might be just as useful, as he now gets to fire 5 times before having to reload. And there we are, Italy awaits us, so let's get going.
Ranger
in position to drop.
Word just came down. The aliens have amassed a huge force to strike one of the resistance outposts nearby, and those people desperately need any help we can provide them. We're going in to eliminate the enemy threat and secure the area. Menace 1-5, hostile forces are attacking the outpost. Eliminate all enemy units and protect those civilians. Advent came in hot and so did we. You won't have a concealed position for deployment on this one.
Well, except for Dragonova, which is one of the reasons we brought her, and her concealment will hopefully help us scout out the aliens as well as the 13 civilians on the map, of which we need to rescue at least 6, ideally a few more.
My life is in your hands.
So let's get to it. The first move here does not reveal anything except for 2, maybe 3 civilians if I see that correctly. To get to the one by the tree here, however, we would need to move Dragonova in a slightly exposed position, so let's stick to cover for now.
I am at your service. I have sight beyond vision. There's an alien patrol nearby.
Alright, and there we are, we have found our first group of enemies. For now we can see a Viper and a Stun Lancer. The third enemy meanwhile, an Advent Purifier, was only briefly visible. So let's set things up here and stay out of range while we do. The distance is likely a bit too much to execute an Overwatch ambush, and unfortunately we also don't really have the time to take things slow. So here we are, we've made contact. That should hopefully shift the aliens' attention from the civilians onto us.
We can no longer hide.
Even though Dragonova loses her concealment in the process as the Viper gets too close. Enemy group number 2 then seems to be the same, only this time with an officer instead of a Viper, albeit thankfully a slightly inaccurate one. And that brings us to the third group of enemies, the same as the first, and unfortunately the Viper does not miss its target, and as a result we suffer our first civilian casualty. For the group at hand, meanwhile, both the Stun Lancer and the Purifier have stayed back a bit, while the Viper in its current position should be easily flanked. We'll start things off with the Purifier though, as Van Dyke can move into a flanking position and get the guaranteed kill with the Boltcaster. This slightly more aggressive move forwards was relatively risk-free. After all, we already know that the other two groups are still a good distance away. Up next then, we are going for the slash attack against the Stun Lancer, which unfortunately only deals minimum damage and does not get us the kill. So, with only 3 moves and a full health Viper also still left, it's time to get creative, as we are first using our Reaper to plant a Claymore right next to the Viper.
Soon our prey will fall.
Now, this does not end Dragonova's turn, but we'll get back to her in just a second. But first, we'll move up with Nicholas Finlay and launch a grenade to hit both the Claymore as well as the Viper.
Throwing grenade!
There we go, that's 8 points of damage and every single bit of cover removed, which means Dragonova can now go for the kill from point blank range. And finally then, for the Stun Lancer, we'll make use of the fact that the Shadowfall ability from Adolind's Shadowkeeper is guaranteed to hit no matter how much cover an enemy has, with the downside being that it can only be used once per mission.
Target neutralized!
It hits and gets the kill though, and as a result our Sharpshooter now gains concealment. In the meantime, Advent continues their rampage, this time with another civilian kill. Luckily though, the other group does not seem to strike. As our turn then resumes, we can see 5 civilians clearly visible right in front of us, although we should of course also keep in mind the chance that one or more of them are faceless, even though from my experience that is usually not the case with those closest to our starting position.
Los geht's! Na los, verschwinden Sie hier!
So let's draw up in a nice line here and rescue our first few.
Es kann losgehen!
Honestly, I think getting to 6 should not be too difficult,
Get back to the ship!
especially since it seems to be very clear that we only have 2 more enemy groups left.
Watching comes
On
naturally.
Overwatch!
Those continue to do their fair bit of damage though, keeping their kill count solidly ahead of the number of rescued civilians, so after Adolin has scouted ahead, I think it's time to even the score.
You cannot run.
Or not, as we have just encountered our first faceless, so now this 12 hit point behemoth is standing in our way, although we should be able to dispose of it quickly, first with a slash attack from Starfall Antac, and then with another Boltcaster shot from Van the Damn Dyke.
Willst du noch mehr?
Afterwards, our Grenadier Nicholas is then in fact a bit more lucky and rescues civilian number 3, while Dragonova just catches up with the rest for now. I think we'll save her concealability for when the enemies get a bit closer.
Got it covered! We're losing civilians left and right, Commander. We need to get these people out of here.
And yes, for now our enemies seem to be very much content with just murdering more civilians, so it looks like in order to get them to stop we need to bring the fight to them. As you can imagine, that is a fairly risky endeavor though, so perhaps we can at least get to those 6 rescues before they're all dead.
I was born in the shadows.
So now would be a good time to conceal Dragonova just to increase her movement range, while Adolin moves up first and rescues civilian number 4.
You're good to go.
Instead of going for number 5 right away though, she can instead move onto the high ground. That should give her a good view of that left side of the battlefield, while our Reaper moves in for civilian number 5.
Go on, run.
You can also see another one in the room ahead of us, but for now we'll stay put. Grenadier Finlay will move on to the rooftop as well, while Van Dyke and Ranger Antag stay on the ground for now.
Legen wir endlich los.
About to get burnt to a crisp.
Our enemies meanwhile have gotten onto the high ground themselves and we're now up to 5 civilian casualties, so I would say it's high time to make it 6 on our side and finally complete that first objective.
Status confirmed. We've secured a civilian contact.
Alright, so 2 civilians left, let's see who can get them. Our pressure has definitely been reduced a bit and they're also not too far away from our current position. Still, I think we've reached the point where we should be able to play it a bit more safely.
We've got an enemy squad here.
Especially considering that our concealed sharpshooter has just found another group of Advent. So, knowing where they are, we want to move a little closer but stay out of sight. Luckily, this building has a high number of doors that should give us various points of access.
Affirmative. Covering now. I'm on it.
Roger. I've got my eyes on.
It's turning into a massacre out there, Commander. That camp is getting wiped out.
Okay, so now this is interesting. Advent just killed a civilian, and still there are 2 more visible left on the map. That means one of them is another faceless, and with the enemy patrol just on the other side of the door here, I don't think we want to find out which one just yet. So instead, let's activate the group and watch them scatter.
I will always find you.
Their positioning is definitely not going to make this easy, although Ranger Antag has an ace up his sleeve. With his free axe throw, he can now blow up the explosive next to the purifier, and that gets us the first kill without a single action wasted. Against the Stun Lancer, we are then once again going with the melee attack, this time also with a higher hit and crit chance thanks to Shadow Strike, which is triggered here because the enemy cannot see Starfall's original position.
I got it, right?
And despite the fact that we don't get the critical, we do get the kill, leaving only the Advent officer. And for that one, we are now getting Nicholas Finlay onto the high ground for a flanking shot. Sadly though, he does not get the crit either, but with only 2 hit points left, the officer is now a perfect target for Van Dyke's combat protocol. So, at this point, we could now gamble with Dragonova and find out which of the 2 civilians is the faceless. As you can imagine though, with another enemy group also still roaming around, we are not going to do that. Instead, let's get her up onto the high ground right next to our sharpshooter, in a great hiding place to watch that last group approach.
The time for hiding is over. That patrol is coming.
Okay, so there they are, and at least our 2 hidden ladies would have shots at them.
I guess that'll be okay.
However, let's spend one more turn here to get the rest of our squad into position as well, otherwise this could get ugly, no matter how tempting it is to attempt to blow up the purifier here.
Scanning.
Not Overwatch. Moving to Overwatch.
Okay, there we go, now we know who the faceless is. Luckily though, since it just transformed, it won't get to act on this turn. Ranger Antag meanwhile pulls off a fantastic shot from Overwatch, not only insta-killing the purifier but also blowing it up in the process, which results in a further 5 points of damage on the Stun Lancer. So the case for Mission MVP definitely strengthened with that one. However, we are not done just yet, and with the Faceless also still active, we still have a good number of hit points left to deal with. Let's start simple though, with a guaranteed stun lancer kill from Dragonova,
Good riddance.
which does not even reveal her, but at this point that doesn't make too much of a difference. For the Viper then, we are first dropping down and getting Nicholas into a flanking position, which leads to him completely missing an 89% shot.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
So once again, it's time for Starfall to save the day. We need at least 7 points of damage here, 8 would be better. And as usual, our Ranger delivers, now allowing sharpshooters and army to go for the kill.
Target disabled. We've got eyes on you.
The Faceless, meanwhile, is a task for Van Dyke, who can now use his Frost Bomb to simply render it harmless for the next 2 turns. So there we go, that's the mission more or less complete already. The Faceless should be an easy target now, and so on our next turn, Van Dyke can immediately unload. And with only 4 hit points left, perhaps Nicholas can redeem himself. Let's see if he can land the all-important killing blow.
Hostile neutralized. Menace 1-5, status confirmed. We're not picking up any additional contacts. The AO is clear. Status confirmed. Mission accomplished.
Alright, there we are. A flawless Retaliation mission is in the books. I have to admit, the weapons from the Alien Hunters DLC once again made this one a bit easier, but then again, not using them would also only artificially make things harder, which I really don't think we need to do.
I certainly hope our propaganda effort is not funded from my research budget.
We must never doubt the depths to which our enemy will sink in their misguided beliefs. Today's cruel ambush of Advent outreach squads again proves that we can no longer tolerate XCOM's commitment to the violence and cruelty of the old world.
As long as there's even one Reaper left standing, you can bet they're still in the fight. Finger on the trigger.
And there we are, home sweet home, no injuries, but also no promotions to report, only a few tired soldiers who should hopefully recover over the next few days. In terms of loot then, nothing special, none of our enemies actually dropped anything. Not quite sure if that's a thing for all Retaliation missions or if we just got unlucky.
Another impressive effort, Commander. My expectations were high, and yet you have exceeded them.
And yes indeed, perhaps it might have been possible to rescue 1 or 2 more civilians, but I think with 7 we have done quite well. For each one, the region income in Western Europe has now been increased by 3 supplies, for a grand total of plus 21. We also have another potential soldier bond available, but I think I'll look into that in between episodes. For now, let us continue scanning, maybe we can get to those 160 intel before the end of the episode. Okay, so we also have another rumor to investigate. Doing so would take us 6 days and increase the region income in West Africa. And while this would be a long-term increase, I think we have better ways to spend our time, at least at the moment.
Avenger plotting new course.
And there we are, 160 intel exactly, meaning we could now make contact with Eastern Europe.
Avenger plotting new course.
However, before we do, let us quickly grab this month's supply drop. And with that, our first Dark event has now come into effect. Stun Lancers can now move after making a melee attack, although if we continue to prioritize them and take them out before they can act, this should hopefully not be too much of a problem.
In my quest to be the Elder's favored child, even I must resort to the deceptive tactics of my enemy.
Okay, now this is a nasty one. A Chosen sabotage was expected, and this one has now affected multiple of our soldiers.
The Chosen are doing whatever it takes to slow us down. We need to watch out for their sabotage attempts.
Now, what this sabotage has done is it has given a number of our soldiers the negative fear of the Chosen trait, meaning that those affected now have a chance to panic immediately upon seeing a Chosen on the battlefield. As you can imagine, that is problematic, especially if it has affected some of our higher level folks, which, as we can see in the infirmary here, it has in Van Dyke and Twitchy. Thankfully though, we already have the infirmary, meaning we can now remove those negative traits, one soldier at a time. During the procedure, however, each one of them will be unavailable for 10 days. And I think we'll start with Van Dyke as our combat-focused specialist and then move on to Twitchy. Those two, however, should be freed of this as soon as possible. So all in all, definitely an annoying sabotage at this point in time, although it is one that we can luckily counteract, so I think in the grand scheme of things this could have gone much worse. In either case, it's back to scanning and the rest of the supply drop is emptied out without any interruptions, meaning we are now 244 supplies richer and can now finally make contact with Eastern Europe. Doing so is very important, as this region is the gateway to two other regions, both with advent facilities in them, and if we want to stop the Avatar project, we need to take those out.
Commander, we've utilized all of our available communications capacity. We can't establish any new contacts until we upgrade our systems.
And yes indeed, for now this is the last region we can make contact with. However, there are of course ways to upgrade that capacity.
I know you keep track of your soldiers, but what about all those civilians, Commander? Any idea how many you've lost out there?
And after the assassin's sabotage, the Hunter now reduces our region income in India, only by 17 supplies, but again, in the long run, this could definitely be noticeable.
The Elders never had any issues targeting civilians, and their Chosen are no different. The Resistance is counting on us to protect their people. We can't let them down. Got an urgent communication coming in for you now, Commander.
And there we are, another month has ended, time for our performance review.
You have made considerable progress against the aliens over the past month, Commander. I hope that your ongoing efforts will only lead to further success.
Right, so far nothing to complain about, I think, although the situation with the Chosen is likely only getting more and more tense.
I admire your tenacity, but at this rate, your days are numbered.
Okay, so the assassin has shifted from sabotaging to training, meaning our next encounter could potentially be a lot more dangerous than before, while the hunter has now officially moved into the sabotage phase as well, so we will have another one coming our way shortly. In the meantime, a look at this month's dark events. We don't have enough intel to reveal the hidden events, and the returned fire one was already present last time. The new addition are the stiletto rounds in the middle, as those would allow Advent to cause bleeding damage if we're hit, and with the still somewhat limited health pools of our soldiers, that is something we want to avoid. Now, we'll see which ones we'll actually get to counter with the next guerrilla ops. We can also already prepare for the next construction of an Avatar facility in about 1 week, while the next retaliation strike is thankfully still a bit into the future. Regarding our resistance orders, we now have an additional slot thanks to improving our relationship with the Reapers, and from the orders that are available to choose from here, I think we will go back to Scavengers. I believe that's the one we picked at the beginning of the series, and to me it seems like the most sensible one at this point in time.
It's as good as done.
Our next supply drop then consists of 220 supplies, but we'll ignore that for now. For the moment, our main goal is to finally establish contact with our third region. Before we can get to that, however, the Guerrilla Tactics School has produced another sharpshooter, and of course we want to get the next person ready for training immediately. At this point, the only class that we do not have 4 soldiers in is the Grenadier, and so our next candidate here, Ingrid Eriksson, nicknamed Angel, will go down that path. As always, her full biography will be revealed as soon as she embarks on her first mission, but for the next 10 days she will be busy learning the ways of the Grenadier.
There were some casualties during that last covert action, Commander, but our troops will all recover after some well-earned rest.
And there we are, our covert action is complete and we have made contact with the Templars. Unfortunately, Sapphire West did get injured in the process, so our top-ranked soldiers are not looking too great right now, but in exchange we'll shortly welcome a new face to our ranks.
This is where the Templar faction maintains their headquarters. I'll admit they can be a bit extreme when it comes to psionics, but so far they seem loyal to our cause. We can scan at this location to gain additional support from their people.
My people understand the value of our cooperation, Commander. The Elders see us as nothing more than raw materials for their design. We will take back our power and turn it against them. Oh, Commander, it's about time we spoke, don't you think? I'm Geist, leader of the Templar Order, but I'm sure you already knew that.
stories of me tend to spread far and wide. You are welcome here anytime, Commander, for among all others of your kind, you alone know the true power of the Elders. You have touched their minds, you have heard their voice, and surely you know that they must fall. On behalf of all Templars, I humbly offer our services towards their demise. Together, we shall be unstoppable.
Okay, so I'm not entirely sure what happened to the body of our new recruit. That is a bug that I will hopefully be able to fix in just a second. But for now, much more importantly, we have all 3 resistance factions finally on board. Now, I think it has become very clear the Templars are focused mostly on psionics, so the mental magic from the first game does make a return, although of course with quite a few new additions and mechanics. Speaking of which, we have also gained new resistance orders and covert actions, so let's see what those are.
With our success comes the opportunity for you to assign us new orders, Commander.
First up, we have a resistance order that would increase resource rewards from all missions by 15%. That is good, but not spectacular, and the same also applies to the Bonds of War order here. Once we get to soldier bond levels 2 and 3, this one could come in handy. The level 1 bonds, however, are formed fast enough for this one not to be too useful right now. Now, with that covert action completed, we now of course also have room for the next one, but before we take a look at the options, let's first meet our latest recruit.
Commander, our ring facility is currently idle. If we have the soldiers to spare, we should deploy them on a covert action with the resistance.
So, let's jump into the armory, where we can see Sapphire West will be out of action for 13 days. I think that is manageable. And we can also find our latest addition a bit further down. Now, as you can see, I was able to fix the bug and also modify the character quite a bit. For some reason, my game refuses to pick faction soldiers from the character pool, so I had to manually turn this one into the character submitted by patron supporter Bloodghost. So meet G. Logan, nicknamed Ghost, which will sadly only be able to change once they reach the rank of lieutenant. Their biography reads as follows: there are speculations that Ghost may have escaped from a high-security prison facility in Australia, and it seems that the events that took place during the escape have had a toll on his psyche. He is, however, determined to strike fear in the hearts of the enemy, as they have done to him, or die trying. So, committed to the cause, I would say. Welcome to the team, Mr. Logan.
If you would order us, Commander, we will undertake a new means of disrupting the Elders and their false vision.
Now, at this point, let us wrap up the episode with a look at the list of possible covert actions. With our 3rd faction acquired, we now have a grand total of 10 to choose from, although one of them is locked because our influence with the Reapers is not yet high enough. Now, my personal favorites from this list are probably gathering intel or reducing the Avatar project progress, both actions from the Reapers that should have an immediate effect. Keeping in mind that the list of covert actions is reshuffled at the end of each month, we probably want to think long and hard about whether or not we want to let either one of those pass us by, although that is not to say that some of the others are not potentially intriguing as well. So once again, I would be very interested to hear what you think. Which one do you believe we should take next? Let me know in the comments down below, and as always, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.